She mocked me in front of the whole company, called me irrelevant, pathetic, and lost. Then her boss turned to look at me and said, "That's our CEO." What happened next left the entire room frozen. Imagine being publicly humiliated, called irrelevant, pathetic, and lost by your own sister. She mocked me in front of the entire company, tearing me down piece by piece. But then, her boss, a man I barely knew, turned to her, his face stone cold, and said 4 words that changed everything. "That's our CEO you're talking about." My sister's face went white. The room froze. What the hell happened next? My hands were trembling that night as I walked into the Horizon Innovations corporate event. I was Mackenzie Wilson, 32, and this would be the first time seeing my sister, Madison, in months. And honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready. Growing up in her shadow had been hard enough, but now, with my recent career change still under wraps, I felt this strange mix of powerful and vulnerable. Little did I know that within hours, Madison would try to humiliate me in front of everyone, not realizing she was making the biggest mistake of her professional life. Growing up as Madison Wilson's little sister was like living in a permanent eclipse. For years, my senior at 36, was the undisputed golden child of our family. While most siblings have their strengths and weaknesses, Madison seemed to excel at absolutely everything she touched. By 3rd grade, she was reading high school novels. Middle school? Class president and debate team captain. High school brought more accolades than you could count: valedictorian, prom queen, state tennis champion, and a full academic scholarship to Cornell. I, on the other hand, was just Mackenzie, the mediocre one. It wasn't that I was actually mediocre, but standing next to the blinding light of Madison's achievements, I might as well have been invisible. My solid B+ average looked dismal next to her perfect 4.0. My position on the school newspaper meant nothing compared to her editorship. Even when I discovered my passion for computer programming and won a regional coding competition in 11th grade, my parents' response was lukewarm at best. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, barely looking up from the college brochures Madison had spread across our kitchen table. "But don't you think you should focus more on your regular studies? Look at the opportunities Madison has because of her grades." Our parents never intentionally pitted us against each other, but they didn't have to. The constant comparisons happened naturally, and neither of them seemed aware of how their words affected me. Dad was particularly guilty, always introducing us as Madison, our Cornell graduate, and Mackenzie, our younger daughter, as if my entire identity was simply being born second. College only widened the gap. Madison graduated summa cum laude with a double major in economics and business administration. Within weeks, she had multiple job offers and accepted a position at North Star Financial, one of the most prestigious firms in the country. Her starting salary was more than our parents made combined, and they couldn't have been prouder. My college journey was more winding. I started at State University as a business major, trying to follow Madison's path, but quickly realized I was miserable. After a particularly rough semester, I dropped out, much to my parents' horror. 6 months later, I enrolled at a different school as a psychology major, only to switch to computer science after a year. It took me 5.5 years to graduate, and my ceremony was nothing like Madison's. "At least you finished," my mother whispered, squeezing my hand as if consoling me for some terrible loss. Madison hadn't even attended, citing an important business meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. The early years of my career reflected my scattered education. I bounced between entry-level IT positions, never staying anywhere longer than 18 months. Madison, meanwhile, was climbing the corporate ladder at North Star with impressive speed. Each family gathering became an opportunity for her to highlight the contrast between us. So Mackenzie, still at that help desk job, she'd ask over Thanksgiving dinner, knowing full well I'd moved on months ago. "Actually, I'm working as a junior developer now," I'd respond, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice. "Oh, that's right. Hard to keep track when you change jobs so often," she'd say with a laugh that our parents would echo, as if my career exploration was an amusing quirk rather than a genuine search for my place in the world. The turning point came when I met Harold Warner. Harold was in his 60s, a tech industry veteran who had seen the rise and fall of countless companies. I was helping him recover data from a corrupted hard drive at the small tech consulting firm where I was working at the time. Something about my approach impressed him. "You don't think like everyone else," he told me after I'd solved his problem using an unconventional method. "That's rare, and it's valuable." That single comment, delivered casually while I was packing up my equipment, meant more to me than all the backhanded compliments my family had ever given me. Harold and I stayed in touch. He became a mentor, encouraging me to develop my ideas and trust my instincts. He saw potential in me that no one else had bothered to look for. Madison, of course, was dismissive of this relationship. "A retired tech guy is giving you career advice? That's cute," she said when I mentioned Harold during a rare phone call. "But you know the tech industry is volatile, right? Not like finance. I just got another promotion, by the way. Junior VP now." I congratulated her with genuine happiness, even as her words stung. That was our dynamic. Madison succeeded and made sure everyone knew it. I struggled and tried not to let her comments affect me. What Madison and my family didn't know was that I had been developing my own projects on the side for years. Nights and weekends were spent coding, creating prototypes for apps and systems that might never see the light of day, but which fulfilled me in ways no paycheck ever had. I'd shown some of these projects to Harold, who recognized their potential even when I doubted myself. "You've got something special here, Mackenzie," he'd say, eyes lighting up as I walked him through my latest creation. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." For once in my life, I believed I might be capable of more than living in Madison's shadow. I just needed the right opportunity to prove it, not just to my family, but to myself. The call from Harold came on a Tuesday evening as I was heating up leftover Chinese food in my modest one-bedroom apartment. At first, I thought he was just checking in, as he often did, but his voice carried an unusual urgency. "Mackenzie, I need to talk to you about an opportunity," he said without preamble. "Are you free for breakfast tomorrow?" The next morning, over coffee and omelets at his favorite diner, Harold laid out a proposition that would change my life. "I've been asked to consult for a company called Horizon Innovations," he explained. "They're a promising tech startup that's hit a rough patch. Their products are solid, but they're struggling to find their market. The board wants fresh perspectives." I nodded, wondering why he was telling me this. Harold's consulting gigs were frequent. This didn't seem different from his usual projects. "I want you to join me," he continued, sliding a folder across the table. "As my associate." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Me? But I'm not a consultant. I'm just a developer." Harold's eyes crinkled at the corners, the way they did when he thought I was underestimating myself. "You're a problem solver with vision. That's exactly what Horizon needs right now." The position would require me to leave my current job, but the 3-month contract Harold offered paid better than my annual salary. Still, I hesitated. What if I fail? What if I can't help them? "Then you'll have learned something valuable and made good money doing it," he said simply. "But I don't think you'll fail." With that vote of confidence, I accepted. 2 weeks later, I walked into Horizon Innovations headquarters for the first time. The company occupied 3 floors of a glass-fronted building downtown, their logo, a stylized rising sun, emblazoned on the walls. Despite the optimistic imagery, the atmosphere inside was tense. Employees spoke in hushed tones, and empty desks suggested recent layoffs. Harold and I were introduced to the executive team, a group of mostly middle-aged men who regarded me with barely concealed skepticism. Only Lisa Sandoval, the head of product development, seemed genuinely pleased to see us. Later, she confided that Horizon had 6 months of runway left before they'd have to close their doors. "We've got amazing technology," she told me, showing me through their product lab, "but we're burning cash and our market strategy isn't working." For the first few weeks, I observed and listened. I sat in on meetings, reviewed financial projections, and familiarized myself with their product line. Nights and weekends were no longer devoted to my personal projects, but to Horizon. I pored over market research, customer feedback, and competitor analyses until my eyes burned. What I discovered both excited and alarmed me. Horizon had developed a revolutionary data processing system that could transform how businesses handled information, but they were marketing it all wrong. Targeting large corporations with lengthy sales cycles instead of the mid-sized businesses that could implement it more quickly. I developed a comprehensive proposal: pivot their market focus, adjust their pricing model, and repackage their core technology as a scalable solution that could grow with their clients. It was risky, essentially suggesting they abandon their current strategy entirely, but the numbers supported my conclusion. The night before I was to present to the board, I called Harold in a panic. "I can't do this," I told him. "They're not going to listen to me. I'm nobody." "You're not nobody," Harold replied firmly. "You're the person who might save their company. Remember that tomorrow." The board meeting was as intimidating as I'd feared. 8 serious faces stared back at me as I walked them through my analysis and recommendations. When I finished, silence filled the room. "This is ambitious," the chairman finally said, his tone making it clear that ambitious wasn't a compliment. "It's also our best chance," Harold countered. "I've been in this industry for 40 years, and I'm telling you, Mackenzie's approach is sound." The debate lasted hours. Some board members were intrigued by my proposal, others dismissed it outright. In the end, they agreed to a compromise. I would lead a small team to implement my strategy with a limited product line. If it showed results within 2 months, they'd consider a full pivot. Those 2 months were the most intense of my professional life. I worked 16-hour days, collaborating with Lisa and a handful of dedicated employees who believed in the new direction. We rebuilt marketing materials, retrained sales staff, and personally reached out to potential clients in our new target market. The results came faster than anyone expected. By the 6-week mark, we'd closed more new business than Horizon had seen in the previous 6 months. By the end of the trial period, revenue had increased by 40%, and the company had a clear path to profitability. The board was impressed enough to fully implement my strategy and offered me a permanent position as Chief Strategy Officer. I accepted, simultaneously thrilled and terrified by the responsibility. What happened next, though, I never could have anticipated. 3 months into my new role, Harold announced he was stepping down from his position as interim CEO, which he'd taken on during the crisis period. "The company's stable now," he told me privately. "It needs someone with vision to lead it forward." "Who are they bringing in?" I asked, already dreading working under a new CEO who might dismantle everything we'd built. Harold smiled that knowing smile of his. They're not bringing anyone in. They're promoting from within. He placed his hands on my shoulders. They're asking you, Mackenzie. I laughed, certain he was joking. But Harold's expression remained serious. Me? But I've only been here for 5 months. And in those 5 months, you've saved the company and positioned it for growth. The board unanimously agreed. They want you to lead Horizon into its next chapter. The private ceremony where I accepted the position was small, just the board members, Harold, and a few key executives. As the chairman handed me a small golden pin with a Horizon logo, he said something I'll never forget. Sometimes the most unlikely leaders turn out to be exactly what an organization needs. I decided to keep my new position quiet for my family, at least temporarily. It wasn't about creating a dramatic reveal. I simply wanted to settle into the role and prove to myself that I deserved it before facing the inevitable skepticism from Madison and my parents. You should tell them. My best friend, Emma, insisted when we met for drinks to celebrate my promotion. Your sister would finally have to acknowledge your success. That's exactly why I'm not telling them yet, I replied. I don't want this to be about Madison or her acknowledgement. I want to know I can do this job well, regardless of what my family thinks. Emma shook her head but didn't press further. Instead, she raised her glass to Mackenzie Wilson, secret CEO extraordinaire. I clinked my glass against hers, still unable to fully believe this was my life now. I keep waiting for someone to realize they've made a terrible mistake. Classic imposter syndrome, Emma diagnosed with a grin. You'd better get over it fast. Imposter syndrome CEOs need to project confidence. She was right, of course, and over the next few weeks, I grew more comfortable in my new role. The executive team respected my decisions, employees responded positively to my leadership style, and our business continued to expand. Then came the news that would set the stage for my eventual confrontation with Madison. North Star Financial, where my sister worked as junior VP, was exploring the possibility of acquiring smaller tech companies to diversify their portfolio. Horizon Innovations was on their list of potential acquisitions. The board was intrigued by the possibility. A partnership with North Star could provide the capital we needed for faster expansion. I was less enthusiastic, concerned about maintaining our company culture and independence, but agreed we should at least entertain the discussion. Which is how I found myself invited to a private industry event where representatives from both companies would have the opportunity to meet informally before any official negotiations began. An event where, inevitably, I would come face to face with Madison for the first time since becoming CEO. Are you going to tell her beforehand? Emma asked when I called her in a panic. No, I decided after a moment's thought. If I tell her now, she'll think I'm trying to impress her. I'd rather just show up and do my job. This is going to be interesting, Emma said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Promise you'll call me right after with all the details. Assuming I survived the experience, I replied, only half joking. As I hung up, I tried to calm my racing thoughts. After years of living in Madison's shadow, I was about to step into the light as her professional equal, or even superior. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. The evening of the networking event arrived faster than I'd anticipated. I stood in front of my closet, second-guessing my outfit choice for the 20th time. In the past, I'd always felt underdressed next to Madison's polished designer wardrobe. Tonight needed to be different. I finally settled on a tailored charcoal suit with subtle pinstripes and a silk blouse in Horizon's signature deep blue. Professional, but not flashy, authoritative without trying too hard. I applied minimal makeup, swept my hair into a sleek low bun, and added the small golden Horizon pin to my lapel. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The nervous younger sister was gone, replaced by someone who looked capable, in charge. You've earned this, I told my reflection, repeating the mantra Harold had suggested whenever my confidence wavered. The event was being held at the Grand, a luxury hotel downtown known for hosting exclusive corporate gatherings. As my driver pulled up to the entrance, I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and stepped out into the cool evening air. Inside, the hotel's ballroom had been transformed into an elegant networking space. Clusters of leather armchairs created intimate conversation areas, while a central bar and buffet encouraged mingling. I recognized some faces from industry events and a few of my own executives who had arrived earlier. I decided to observe for a while before making my presence known. Moving to a quiet corner with a glass of sparkling water, I watched the dynamics unfold. The North Star contingent was easy to spot. They traveled in tight groups, exuding the particular confidence of people accustomed to being the most powerful in any room. Have you seen the Horizon CEO yet? I overheard one man ask another. I heard they recently appointed someone new, but information's been surprisingly tight-lipped. Probably some tech veteran they brought in to make the company attractive for acquisition. His companion replied with a dismissive wave. These startups always do that when they're looking to sell. I smiled to myself, amused by how wrong they were. I was about to move on when a familiar voice cut through the ambient chatter like a knife. Jake. Elizabeth. So good to see you both. Madison. My sister looked exactly as I remembered, perhaps even more polished. Her blonde hair was cut in a sleek bob that emphasized her sharp cheekbones, and her navy blue dress screamed expensive confidence. She was working the room with practiced ease, shaking hands and laughing at just the right moments. I watched her for a few minutes, delaying our inevitable encounter. Madison had always thrived in these settings, while I typically counted the minutes until I could escape, another difference between us that our parents had noted frequently. Finally, deciding I couldn't avoid her all night, I set down my glass and made my way toward her. Madison spotted me when I was about 10 feet away. Her perfectly maintained smile faltered for just a moment before returning at full wattage. "Mackenzie," she exclaimed, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "What a surprise. I had no idea you'd be here." The subtle emphasis on "you" communicated her real question. What was I doing at an exclusive industry event? "Madison," I replied, keeping my voice even as I leaned in for the obligatory air kiss. "It's been a while." "Too long," she agreed, insincerely. "Let me introduce you. This is Lawrence Fletcher, my boss and senior VP at Northstar. Lawrence, this is my baby sister, Mackenzie." Lawrence, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s, extended his hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Mackenzie. Are you in finance like your sister?" Before I could answer, Madison jumped in. "Oh no. She's still in tech. Mackenzie works in tech support, isn't it? Or have you moved on again?" The condescension in her tone was subtle but unmistakable. I saw Lawrence's interest fade slightly, but to his credit, he maintained his polite expression. "I'm still in tech," I said simply, choosing not to correct her assumption just yet. "How are things at Northstar? I hear you're looking at expanding into the tech sector." Lawrence's eyebrows rose slightly, perhaps surprised that someone in tech support would be aware of their corporate strategy. "Indeed, we are. The future is digital, after all." "Smart move," I nodded, though tech acquisitions can be tricky to integrate successfully. "That's why we do extensive due diligence," Madison interjected, clearly annoyed that I was engaging her boss in actual business conversation. "Speaking of which, Lawrence, we should join the others. The Westbrook team wanted to continue our discussion from yesterday." Lawrence seemed slightly reluctant to end our conversation. "Actually, I'm finding this quite interesting. Mackenzie, what's your perspective on the challenges of merging traditional finance with tech culture?" As I began to answer thoughtfully, drawing on my recent experience leading Horizon through its transformation, I could see Madison growing increasingly uncomfortable. Her eyes darted around the room as if looking for rescue, and she kept trying to interject with comments designed to emphasize her importance. "That's an insightful point," Lawrence said when I finished, genuine respect in his voice. "You seem to have a solid grasp of both industries." "Mackenzie's always been a quick study," Madison said with a tight smile, "but theoretical knowledge is one thing. Actually managing these complex transitions is quite another. Our team at Northstar has successfully integrated 3 companies this year alone." "Impressive," I acknowledged, refusing to be baited into competition. "Each acquisition presents unique challenges." Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another Northstar executive, giving me a perfect opportunity to excuse myself. As I walked away, I could feel Madison's eyes boring into my back. Our brief interaction had not gone according to her script, and I knew she wouldn't let that stand. Over the next hour, I mingled with various attendees, including several of my own executives who carefully addressed me as Miss Wilson rather than CEO, as we'd agreed beforehand. I was engaged in a fascinating discussion about data with the CTO from another company when I noticed Madison watching me from across the room, her expression calculating. When we took a brief break, Madison approached, this time alone. "I'm confused," she said without preamble. "Why exactly are you here, Mackenzie? This is a closed industry event for executives and decision-makers." The implication was clear. I didn't qualify as either. "I was invited," I replied simply. "By whom?" she pressed. "Does it matter?" Madison's smile tightened. "I'm just concerned. These events have a certain professional standard. If you're here as someone's +1 or something, it might reflect poorly." The irony of her concern was almost amusing. "Thank you for worrying about me, but I assure you, I have every right to be here." "If you say so," she said doubtfully. "Just try not to embarrass yourself, okay? These people are at the top of their field." With that parting shot, she glided away to rejoin her colleagues, leaving me simultaneously angry and determined to maintain my composure. This was exactly why I hadn't told my family about my promotion, Madison's inability to see me as anything but her less successful little sister. As the evening progressed, I found myself genuinely enjoying conversations with industry leaders who had no preconceived notions about me. When I spoke, they listened. When I offered opinions, they considered them thoughtfully. It was a novel experience to be taken seriously without having to overcome the Madison sister hurdle first. I was so engaged in a discussion about emerging markets that I almost missed the subtle shift in the room's energy. Glancing up, I noticed a small crowd had gathered around Madison, who was gesturing animatedly. Something about her posture set off warning bells in my mind. Excusing myself from my conversation, I drifted closer to Madison's group, staying just far enough away to observe without being noticed. As I approached, Madison's voice carried clearly across the space between us. Absolutely brilliant at solving little technical problems, but completely lost when it comes to the big picture. Our parents worried about her for years. My stomach dropped as I realized she was talking about me. "You should have seen her in college," Madison continued, her voice carrying just enough to ensure nearby conversations faltered as people tuned into her story. "Changed majors 3 times and took nearly 6 years to graduate. Meanwhile, I was already a junior analyst at Northstar." Laughter rippled through her audience, though I noticed several people shifting uncomfortably. Madison, emboldened by the attention, raised her voice slightly. She's always been this way. Jumping from job to job, never quite finding her place. Tech support 1 month, junior developer the next. She made air quotes around developer, as if the title itself was a joke. Our parents finally stopped asking about her career at family dinners. It was just too depressing. I stood frozen, the familiar feeling of humiliation washing over me. This was Madison's specialty, taking my personal struggles and transforming them into amusing anecdotes that highlighted her own success by comparison. She'd done it at family gatherings, at the few social events we'd both attended over the years, and now she was doing it in front of industry professionals who were potential business partners for my company. Lawrence, I noticed, was standing at the edge of the group, his expression growing increasingly uncomfortable as Madison continued. He caught my eye across the room and had the grace to look embarrassed on my behalf, though he made no move to intervene. The funny thing is, Madison was saying now she's actually here tonight. I have no idea how she wrangled an invitation, but that's Mackenzie for you, always trying to network her way into opportunities rather than earning them through hard work like the rest of us. The group's attention swiveled in my direction, and I saw recognition dawn on several faces. Some looked embarrassed to be caught listening to Madison's mockery, while others seemed merely curious about this supposedly incompetent sister. I had 2 choices: retreat and preserve what dignity I could, or confront the situation head-on. The old Mackenzie would have chosen the former, making a quiet exit and crying in the car on the way home. But I wasn't that person anymore. With deliberate calm, I straightened my jacket, touched the horizon pin on my lapel for reassurance, and walked toward the group. Madison, I said as I approached, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I see you're entertaining everyone with family stories. My sister's smile faltered only momentarily before returning with renewed brightness. Mackenzie, I was just telling everyone about your unconventional career path. Yes, I heard, I replied evenly. Though I think you may have missed some recent developments. Oh, Madison laughed lightly. Did you change jobs again? It's so hard to keep track. I could see Lawrence wincing at her tone, but Madison, caught up in her performance, didn't notice. Actually, I've been with the same company for nearly a year now, I said. A whole year. That must be some kind of record for you. Madison quipped, earning a few reluctant chuckles from her audience. Encouraged, she pressed on. What exactly are you doing there? Still fixing computers when they break? Something like that, I answered vaguely, unwilling to reveal my position just yet. I wanted to see how far Madison would go. I didn't have to wait long. Let me guess, Madison said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. You're here tonight hoping to make some connections? Maybe find your next job when this one inevitably doesn't work out? That's always been your pattern, hasn't it? Drifting from one thing to the next, never quite measuring up. The room had grown quieter, more people tuning into our exchange. I remained silent, letting Madison dig herself deeper. It must be exhausting, she continued, constantly trying to reinvent yourself. Always the irrelevant little sister, always playing catch-up. A few people in the crowd were now openly uncomfortable, exchanging glances or finding sudden interest in their drinks, but Madison, buoyed by what she perceived as her superior position, didn't notice or didn't care. I mean, let's be honest, Mackenzie, you're what, 32 now? And what do you have to show for it? No stable career, no professional accomplishments worth mentioning. Even mom and dad have given up hoping you'll find your way. Each word struck like a physical blow, not because they were true, but because they revealed how little. Madison thought of me, how little she knew about who I'd become. In her mind, I was perpetually the confused, underachieving younger sister, a convenient foil to her own success story. You know what's truly pathetic? Madison asked, her voice dropping to a mock confidential tone that nonetheless carried clearly. You showing up at an event like this, surrounded by actual executives and decision-makers, pretending you belong. These people run companies, Mackenzie. They shape industries. What could you possibly contribute to conversations like that? Lawrence cleared his throat loudly, clearly attempting to signal Madison to stop, but she was too caught up in her monologue to notice. I mean, look around. She gestured expansively. Everyone here has earned their place through hard work and talent. They're not lost souls hoping to network their way into relevance. The silence that followed her statement was deafening. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, waiting for my response. In that moment, memories of similar humiliations flashed through my mind. Madison belittling my science fair project in front of my teachers. Madison interrupting my stories at Thanksgiving dinner to correct inaccuracies. Madison explaining to my college friends why I'd changed majors yet again. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't the person Madison thought I was. This time, I had nothing to prove to her or anyone else. I was about to respond when Lawrence stepped forward, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and stern authority. He placed a hand on Madison's shoulder, effectively silencing her. Madison, he said quietly but firmly, I think that's enough. Madison turned to him with a confident smile, clearly expecting support. I'm just filling everyone in on some background family context, you know. Lawrence's next words changed everything. Madison, that's enough, Lawrence repeated, his voice carrying clearly in the now silent room. That's our CEO you're talking about. For a moment, it seemed as if time had stopped. Madison's expression froze mid-smile, her eyes widening as Lawrence's words sank in. She turned back to me, disbelief written across her features. What? The word came out as barely more than a whisper. Mackenzie Wilson, Lawrence continued, turning to address the gathered crowd, is the CEO of Horizon Innovations, the company North Star has been so eager to discuss potential partnerships with. The silence in the room gave way to a soft murmur as people processed this information. I watched emotions flicker across Madison's face in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, embarrassment, and finally, a dawning horror as she realized what she'd done. That's not possible, Madison stammered, her composure cracking. Mackenzie is, she trailed off, unable to reconcile her perception of me with this new reality. I stepped forward then, my initial anger giving way to a strange calm. This moment wasn't about humiliating Madison, as she had tried to humiliate me. It was about finally claiming my own identity, separate from hers. I was appointed CEO of Horizon Innovations 6 months ago, I said, addressing not just Madison but the entire room. Before that, I served as Chief Strategy Officer, helping to implement a comprehensive restructuring that increased our revenue by 40% and positioned us for sustainable growth. Madison's face had gone pale, her usual confident demeanor completely shattered. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, seemingly at a loss for words. Lawrence, to his credit, attempted to smooth over the awkward situation. Ms. Wilson has been instrumental in transforming Horizon into exactly the kind of innovative, agile company North Star is interested in partnering with, he said, giving Madison a pointed look that clearly communicated she had made a grave professional error. I didn't know, Madison finally managed, her voice small. Then, with visible effort, she attempted to recover. I was just joking, of course. Sister humor. Mackenzie knows I'm her biggest supporter. The transparent attempt to reframe her previous comments fell flat. Several people in the crowd exchanged knowing glances, and I could see the damage control already beginning in Madison's mind. Rather than dwelling on her discomfort, I decided to redirect the conversation to the reason we were all there. Stepping into the center of the group, I addressed the assembled executives with newfound confidence. Since we're all here, I'd like to take a moment to share Horizon's vision for the future of data management in financial services. Our proprietary processing system has applications that could transform how firms like North Star handle client information. As I launched into a brief but compelling overview of our technology, I could see respect dawning in the eyes of those listening. They were no longer seeing me as Madison's awkward little sister, but as a knowledgeable industry leader with valuable insights. Lawrence nodded appreciatively as I spoke, occasionally asking intelligent questions that allowed me to highlight our company's strengths. Madison remained silent throughout, her expression fluctuating between shock and mortification. When I finished my impromptu presentation, several executives approached with business cards and requests for follow-up meetings. Lawrence was particularly enthusiastic, pulling me aside to express his personal interest in exploring collaboration opportunities. I'm impressed, he said quietly. Not just with your company, but with how you handled that uncomfortable situation. Lesser leaders might have responded differently. Professional courtesy is important, I replied, glancing briefly at Madison, who was now standing alone by the bar, downing what appeared to be a stiff drink. Especially when considering potential business relationships. Lawrence nodded, understanding my meaning. For what it's worth, that kind of behavior is not representative of North Star's professional standards. I'll be addressing it privately. I thanked him for his candor, exchanged contact information, and promised to have my team follow up with his to schedule formal discussions. As he walked away, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had been seen and evaluated on my own merits, not as an extension or comparison to Madison. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. Industry leaders who had previously ignored me now sought me out. Business cards accumulated in my pocket, and potential opportunities for Horizon multiplied with each discussion. Madison made one attempt to approach me, her expression a forced mixture of contrition and sisterly affection. Mackenzie, can we talk for a moment? Privately? I think we've both said enough for one evening, I replied, not unkindly but firmly. We can discuss family matters another time. Tonight, I'm here as Horizon's CEO. She flinched slightly at the rejection but nodded, seeming to understand that she had crossed a line that couldn't be easily walked back. Of course. Another time. As the event began winding down, I found myself in a final conversation with Lisa Sandoval, my head of product development, who had witnessed the entire confrontation with Madison. That was something else, she whispered as we gathered our things to leave. Are you okay? I considered the question carefully before answering. Actually, I'm better than okay. For years, I've been trying to escape Madison's shadow. Tonight, I finally stepped into my own light. Lisa smiled. And it's a pretty bright light. As we walked toward the exit, I caught Madison watching me from across the room. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something I'd never seen in her expression before, uncertainty, tinged with what might have been respect. I gave her a small nod before turning away, knowing that whatever happened next between us, our relationship had fundamentally changed. In the car ride home, I finally allowed myself to process the emotional roller coaster of the evening. There was no triumph in Madison's humiliation. That wasn't what I had wanted. But there was undeniable satisfaction in finally being recognized for my own accomplishments in my own right. As promised, I called Emma the moment I got home, despite the late hour. "You will not believe what just happened," I began, kicking off my heels and sinking onto my couch. "Try me," she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. The morning after the networking event, I woke to a barrage of notifications on my phone. Word had spread quickly through industry channels about the confrontation between Madison and me, with varying degrees of accuracy. My PR director had already sent 3 increasingly urgent messages requesting guidance on how to handle the situation. I sent a brief reply, business as usual. No comments on personal matters. The last thing I wanted was to fuel gossip or create the impression that I defined myself in opposition to my sister. Horizon's success and my leadership would speak for themselves without needing to address family drama. As I was getting ready for work, my phone rang. Madison's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I was ready for this conversation. "Hello, Madison," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Mackenzie," she sounded different. Subdued. Uncertain. "I think we need to talk about last night." "I agree," I replied, sitting on the edge of my bed. "That wasn't how I wanted you to find out." A pause. "Then why didn't you tell me? Or Mom and Dad? 6 months as a CEO and you didn't think to mention it to your family." The accusatory tone was creeping back into her voice, but underlying it was genuine hurt. For the first time, I considered how my secrecy must have looked from her perspective. "I needed time," I explained. "Time to grow into the role, to prove to myself that I deserved it. And honestly, Madison, would you have believed me if I told you?" Another silence, longer this time. "I don't know," she finally admitted. It's not what I expected from you." "That's part of the problem," I said gently. "You've had a very fixed idea of who I am for a long time." "We both have." I heard her exhale slowly. "Lawrence called me into his office first thing this morning. He was not happy about how I represented Northstar last night." "I'm sorry about that," I said, and meant it. Whatever our personal issues, I never wanted to jeopardize Madison's career. "Don't be," she replied with a short, humorless laugh. "I deserved it." He said I demonstrated poor judgment and unprofessional behavior. "He's removing me from the Horizon acquisition team." This news surprised me. "Madison, I can call him." "Explain that it was a personal—" "No," she cut me off. "Don't." "He's right. I let personal feelings affect a business situation. That's exactly what we're trained not to do." A pause. "Besides, it would be a conflict of interest now, given our relationship." The word relationship hung between us. For so long, our relationship had been defined by competition and comparison. Could we build something different now? "Mom and Dad called," Madison continued. "Someone they know was at the event and told them what happened. They want us both to come to dinner this weekend to talk." I grimaced, imagining the awkwardness of that conversation. "Are you going?" "I think we should," Madison said, surprising me again. "They deserve to hear about your success directly from you, not through the grapevine." I agreed, and we made tentative plans to meet at our parents' house on Sunday. As we were about to hang up, Madison added, "For what it's worth, Mackenzie, what you've accomplished is impressive." I shouldn't have needed Lawrence to tell me that for it to register. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Madison, it was significant. "Thank you," I replied. "That means a lot." The call ended, leaving me with mixed feelings. The conversation had gone better than expected, but years of complicated history couldn't be resolved in one phone call. At least it was a start. At the office, I found my team buzzing with energy. News of our potential partnership with Northstar had everyone excited about Horizon's future prospects. Lisa caught me in the hallway on my way to my office. "We've already received calls from 2 other financial institutions interested in our technology," she reported excitedly. "Your presentation last night made quite an impression." "Good," I smiled. "Set up meetings with both. And Lisa, thank you for your support last night. It meant a lot." She squeezed my arm gently. "That's what teams do. We have your back." Later that morning, I received an email from Lawrence Fletcher requesting a private meeting to discuss the partnership potential between our companies. His message made no mention of Madison or the previous night's events, maintaining strictly professional language. I appreciated his discretion. I was responding to his email when Harold called. "I hear you had quite an evening," he said without preamble. "News travels fast," I sighed. It wasn't how I planned to reveal my position to my sister. "Sometimes the universe has its own timeline," Harold replied philosophically. "Are you all right?" "I am," I realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. "Actually, I feel lighter. Like I finally stepped out of a shadow I've been carrying for years." "Good," Harold said. "Because now comes the hard part." "What's that?" "Deciding whether a partnership with Northstar is actually the right move for Horizon, regardless of personal complications." He was right, of course. The confrontation with Madison had overshadowed the actual business purpose of the event. Now I needed to evaluate the potential partnership on its merits alone. "I've scheduled a meeting with the executive team for tomorrow," I told him. "We'll review all options objectively before proceeding." "That's my girl," Harold said proudly. "Always the strategist." After we hung up, I spent the afternoon reviewing our company financials and growth projections. By evening, I had a clearer picture of what Horizon needed from any potential partnership and what we could offer in return. Sunday arrived more quickly than I would have liked. I found myself sitting in my car outside my parents' suburban home, gathering courage to go inside. Madison's sleek black Mercedes was already in the driveway. The family dinner was initially as awkward as I'd feared. My mother fussed nervously with the food while my father alternated between uncomfortable silence and forced cheerfulness. Madison was subdued, offering polite comments about the meal, but avoiding any substantial conversation. Finally, over dessert, my father cleared his throat. So, he began, "I understand congratulations are in order, Mackenzie." "Thank you," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I was appointed CEO of Horizon Innovations 6 months ago." 6 months? My mother exclaimed. "And you didn't tell us?" "I wanted to establish myself first," I explained, repeating what I told Madison. The company was going through significant changes, and I needed to focus on leading that transformation. Still, my mother persisted. "We're your family. We should have been the first to know." Madison, surprisingly, came to my defense. "I think I understand why Mackenzie kept it quiet," she said, setting down her fork. "Our family has a certain dynamic." My parents looked confused. "What do you mean?" my father asked. Madison glanced at me before continuing. "We've always had to find roles in this family. I was the achiever, the successful one. Mackenzie was," she hesitated, "the perpetual work in progress." I finished for her. "That's not fair," my mother protested, but her tone lacked conviction. "Isn't it?" I asked gently. "When I dropped out of college, Dad, you told me I should try to be more like Madison. When I changed careers for the 3rd time, Mom, you asked if I'd ever find my place, like Madison did." My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, recognition dawning in their expressions. "We never meant to compare you," my father said eventually. "We just wanted you to be successful. And in your minds, success looked like Madison's path," I pointed out. "But that wasn't my path. It took me longer to find my way, but I did find it on my own terms." Madison had been quiet, watching this exchange. Now she spoke up. "I owe you an apology, Mackenzie. Multiple apologies, actually. I've been unkind, competitive, in ways that weren't healthy for either of us." The admission clearly cost her, and I appreciated her willingness to make it in front of our parents. "I wasn't blameless either," I acknowledged. "I resented your success instead of finding my own definition of it." My mother wiped away tears. "I had no idea you felt this way, either of you. We never wanted to create this competition between you. It wasn't intentional," I assured her, "but it was real. And now we have a chance to change it." The conversation that followed was one of the most honest our family had ever had. My parents expressed genuine interest in my work at Horizon, asking thoughtful questions about my leadership approach and vision for the company. Madison shared some of her own insecurities, how her rapid rise at Northstar had created intense pressure to maintain a perfect image, contributing to her competitive behavior. By the time we left that evening, something had shifted in our family dynamic. It wasn't perfect, and years of established patterns wouldn't change overnight, but we had made a start. In the driveway, Madison stopped me before I got into my car. "I meant what I said in there. I am sorry for how I've treated you, especially at the networking event." "I know," I said. "And I accept your apology." She hesitated, then asked, "Will this affect your decision about the partnership with Northstar?" I appreciated her directness. "No. That decision will be based on what's best for Horizon, nothing else." Madison nodded, seeming relieved. "That's fair. For what it's worth, I think there's potential for both companies to benefit, regardless of our personal history." "I agree," I replied. "Which is why I've scheduled a meeting with Lawrence for next week to discuss specific terms." She looked surprised. "You have?" "Business is business," I said with a small smile. "And apparently, I'm pretty good at it." For the first time in perhaps our entire adult lives, Madison looked at me with genuine respect. "Yes," she said simply. "You are." The following week brought another surprising development. Lawrence called personally to inform me that he wanted to restructure the potential partnership between our companies. "I've been thinking about our conversation at the event," he explained. "Your approach to data management could transform our entire operation. Rather than acquisition, I'd like to propose a strategic alliance. Horizon would remain independent, but we'd integrate your systems across our platform." It was exactly the kind of partnership I had hoped for, one that would provide Horizon with Northstar's resources and reach while preserving our autonomy and culture. "I'm definitely interested," I told him. "Have your team send over the details, and we'll set up a formal meeting." "Excellent," Lawrence replied. "And Mackenzie, I've been restructuring our tech division leadership. We need someone who truly understands both finance and technology to head the integration on our side." I immediately knew where he was going with this. Madison would be excellent in that role. "You think so?" he asked, sounding surprised. "After everything that happened? Life is complicated." "Madison is intelligent, detail-oriented, and knows Northstar's operations inside out," I said. "Our personal history aside, she would be an asset to the project." There was a pause before Lawrence responded. "That's remarkably generous of you." "It's not generosity," I corrected him. "It's good business." After we hung up, I called Emma to update her on all the developments. "So, let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "Your sister publicly humiliated you, but now you're possibly going into business with her company, and even recommended her for a position that would have you working together?" "Life is complicated," I replied with a laugh. "No kidding," Emma said. Just promise me one thing. When they make the movie about your life, make sure they cast someone good to play me. I was still laughing when my assistant notified me that Harold had arrived for our weekly mentoring session. Seeing him walk into my office, I was struck by how much had changed since that first meeting in the diner when he'd offered me the consulting position with Horizon. "You're looking well," he observed, settling into the chair across from my desk. "The events of the past week seem to have agreed with you." "I feel different," I admitted. "More complete, somehow." Harold nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when I first met you, I saw someone with extraordinary potential who was held back by how others perceived her, more importantly, by how she perceived herself." "And now?" I asked. "Now I see a leader who has stepped fully into her power," he said simply. "Someone who makes decisions based on what's right, not what's easy or expected." His words warmed me. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance." "Nonsense," Harold waved dismissively. "I merely opened a door. You walked through it on your own and built this success with your own talent." We spent the next hour discussing Horizon's future, the potential alliance with North Star, and my vision for where to take the company next. As Harold was leaving, he paused at the door. "By the way," he said casually, "Lawrence Fletcher called me yesterday. Apparently you suggested your sister for the integration team." I nodded, curious about his reaction. Harold smiled. "That's the difference between a boss and a leader, Mackenzie. A boss holds grudges. A leader sees potential, even in difficult relationships." After he left, I sat quietly at my desk, reflecting on everything that had happened. From the outside, my success might look like a story of revenge, the underestimated sister finally getting her moment of triumph. But it wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about Madison or even my parents. It was about finding my own path, in my own time, and recognizing that success wasn't a fixed destination, but a journey of continual growth and self-discovery. Madison and I would never have a simple relationship. Too much history lay between us for that. But perhaps we could build something new, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition. It wouldn't be easy, but few things worth doing ever are. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. The strategic alliance between Horizon Innovations and North Star Financial was officially announced to enthusiastic market response, with both companies' stock prices surging on the news. Under my leadership, Horizon continued to grow, expanding our team and developing new applications of our technology. My relationship with Madison evolved slowly but steadily. Our weekly meetings regarding the integration project were initially stiff and formal, but gradually became more relaxed as we established a new dynamic. We were best friends. Too much history stood between us for that. But we had found a way to interact as professionals who respected each other's abilities. One particularly memorable moment came during a joint presentation to both companies' boards. Madison was explaining the technical specifications of the integration when one board member interrupted with a dismissive question that underestimated the complexity of the process. Before I could intervene, Madison firmly but politely corrected him. "With all due respect, sir, that approach would compromise the system architecture that makes Horizon's technology so valuable." As CEO Wilson has emphasized, maintaining data integrity throughout the integration is non-negotiable. The small correction from my sister to CEO Wilson might have seemed insignificant to others, but to me, it represented a profound shift in how Madison saw me, no longer just her little sister, but a CEO whose vision deserved respect. After the meeting, I caught up with her in the hallway. "Thanks for backing me up in there." Madison shrugged, but I could see she was pleased. "It was the right call. Your system architecture is impressive. I've learned a lot studying it these past months." Coming from Madison, this simple acknowledgement meant more than effusive praise from anyone else. As our professional relationship stabilized, I found myself facing an unexpected decision. Horizon's rapid growth had created the need for a new position, Chief Operations Officer. Someone who could streamline our increasingly complex business processes while I focused on strategic direction and innovation. Lisa Sandoval, my head of product development, was an obvious candidate. She had been with me since the beginning of Horizon's transformation and understood our company culture intimately. But as I reviewed potential candidates, another name kept surfacing in my thoughts: Madison. The idea seemed absurd at first. Working with Madison on a limited integration project was one thing. Bringing her into Horizon's leadership team was quite another. Yet I couldn't deny that her skills were exactly what we needed. She was organized, detail-oriented, and had extensive experience managing complex operations. I discussed the possibility with Harold during one of our regular mentoring sessions. "Are you considering Madison because she's qualified or because you want to prove something?" he asked bluntly. It was a fair question that forced me to examine my motivations. After careful reflection, I concluded that while our history complicated things, Madison truly was the best person for the job. "The question isn't whether she's qualified," I told Harold. "It's whether we can work together effectively, given our past." "And what do you think?" he prompted. "I think we've both grown," I replied slowly. "The past 6 months have shown that. But ultimately, it's her decision." I invited Madison to lunch the following week at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant midway between our offices. After catching up on the integration progress, I took a deep breath and made my proposition. "I'd like you to consider joining Horizon as our Chief Operations Officer," I said, sliding a formal offer letter across the table. Madison's shock was evident. You're offering me a job? Working directly under you. Yes, I confirmed. The integration project has shown me that your operational skills are exactly what Horizon needs at this stage of our growth. You'd have considerable autonomy, of course, but yes, ultimately you would report to me as CEO. Madison stared at the offer letter without touching it. Why? She asked finally. After everything that's happened between us, why would you want me on your team? Because you're the best person for the job, I answered honestly. And because I think we've proven we can work together effectively when we both focus on common goals rather than old rivalries. She was quiet for a long moment. What about North Star? I've built my career there. I've already spoken with Lawrence, I admitted. He doesn't want to lose you, but he understands this is a significant opportunity. He's offered to keep a board position open for you if you decide to make the move. Madison finally picked up the offer letter, scanning the details. This is generous. It's market rate for your experience and the scope of the position, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. I'd need time to think about it, she said, folding the letter carefully. Of course. Take all the time you need. We finished lunch discussing lighter topics, but I could see Madison's mind working, weighing possibilities and implications. 3 days later, she called to accept the position. Madison's integration into Horizon's culture wasn't seamless. Some employees were wary, having heard rumors about our confrontation at the networking event. Others questioned whether her appointment was due to nepotism rather than merit. Madison faced these challenges with more grace than I might have expected, working diligently to prove her value through actions rather than words. For my part, I made it clear to the entire organization that Madison had been hired for her skills, not her relationship to me. I established transparent boundaries and expectations, ensuring that our professional interactions were visible and accountable to the executive team. Slowly but surely, the awkwardness faded. Madison's operational expertise began to show results as our processes became more efficient and scalable. Team members who had initially been skeptical came to appreciate her attention to detail and commitment to excellence. Our parents were thrilled by this development, naturally interpreting it as a sign that all family tensions were resolved. The reality was more nuanced. Madison and I were building a new relationship based on professional respect, but the personal wounds of our childhood rivalry couldn't be healed overnight. The breakthrough in our personal relationship came unexpectedly during a late night at the office. We were both working on quarterly projections, the rest of the building silent and empty around us. I brought coffee to Madison's office, finding her surrounded by spreadsheets and looking uncharacteristically frazzled. I don't know how you do this, she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Lead an entire company, I mean. The responsibility is overwhelming. It was perhaps the first time Madison had ever acknowledged finding anything difficult. The vulnerability in her admission opened a door between us. I was terrified when I first started, I confessed, sitting across from her. I used to wake up at 3 in the morning, convinced I was going to run the company into the ground. Madison looked surprised. You seemed so confident. That was the act, I smiled. Fake it till you make it, right? I've been faking it my whole life, Madison said quietly, staring into her coffee. Everyone always thought I had it all figured out, that success came easily to me. No one saw the pressure, the fear of failing, of not living up to expectations. I did, I said. But I misinterpreted it. I thought you were just perfect. I never considered you might be struggling too, in your own way. Madison's eyes met mine, a lifetime of misunderstanding passing between us. We never really knew each other, did we? Not as adults. Maybe it's not too late to start, I suggested. That conversation marked a turning point. We began having regular dinners outside of work, carefully navigating the transition from colleagues to something resembling friends. We discovered shared interests we'd never known about and laughed over childhood memories that looked different from adult perspectives. Our parents noticed the change during family gatherings, commenting on how wonderful it was to see us finally getting along. What they didn't understand was that we weren't simply papering over old conflicts. We were building something entirely new from the ground up. At Horizon, I implemented changes to our company culture that were directly informed by my experience of being underestimated. We created mentorship programs that paired senior executives with promising employees from diverse backgrounds. Our hiring practices were restructured to value varied career paths rather than traditional metrics of success. I made it a point to highlight that innovation often comes from unexpected places and people. These initiatives weren't just about my personal philosophy. They made good business sense. Our team became more creative, more resilient, and more collaborative as we embraced different perspectives and approaches. 1 year after the fateful networking event, Harold announced his retirement from active consulting. We held a celebration at Horizon's headquarters where I had the opportunity to publicly thank him for his guidance. Harold saw potential in me when no one else did, I told the gathered crowd. He taught me that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions and being willing to learn from everyone around you. After the formal ceremony, Harold and I sat together in my office, sharing a quiet moment amid the festivities. I'm proud of you, Mackenzie, he said, looking around at what Horizon had become under my leadership. Not just for the company's success, but for how you've handled everything else, your sister, your family, your own growth. I had a good teacher, I replied. Harold shook his head. Teachers can only open doors. You walked through them yourself. What advice do you have for me going forward? I asked, knowing this might be one of our last mentoring conversations. Harold considered the question carefully. Remember that success isn't a destination, it's a journey. And the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. Be as kind to yourself as you've learned to be with others, including Madison. His words stayed with me long after the party ended. That night, I found myself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past year and a half, from consultant to CEO, from Madison's shadow to my own light, from resentment to understanding. The story that others might tell about this time would focus on the dramatic moment of revelation, Madison's humiliation, and my triumph. But the true transformation had happened in the quieter moments that followed, in difficult conversations, in small acts of professional respect, in the gradual rebuilding of trust and the discovery of new common ground. Success, I had learned, wasn't defined by titles or salaries or even moments of public vindication. It was defined by resilience, the ability to fall down 7 times and stand up 8. It was defined by growth, the willingness to evolve beyond old patterns and perceptions. Most importantly, it was defined by authenticity, the courage to follow your own path, even when others couldn't see where it was leading. Madison and I would never have a simple relationship. The dynamics formed in childhood had shaped us both too profoundly for that. But we had found a way forward, based on mutual respect and understanding, not as competitors, but as 2 women with different strengths, different journeys, and finally, different definitions of success. Have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the people who don't believe in you are the ones who inspire you to prove yourself, not to them, but to yourself. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the courage to follow your own path, regardless of who understands it.